This is the Fierce Heart Alliance. Our focus is spirituality with purpose, exquisite self-care, and conscious community. Hi, I'm Summer Sophia Moon, and I've come here to heal myself and chew bubblegum. And guess what? I'm all out of bubblegum. So join me and my special guests as we share and learn how to love ourselves fiercely through self-care and explore the wisdom of the harmonic virtues. These virtues are based on the laws of the universe and channeled wisdom to cultivate more resiliency, purpose, and harmony through self-care and self-awareness. By listening, you are now a fierce heart too. Welcome to the Fierce Heart Alliance. This is the Fierce Heart Alliance, featuring the harmonic virtues, a self-reflective practice to understand virtues based on the laws of the universe. We can apply these virtues to everyday life to fully participate in our personal evolution by cultivating resiliency, purpose, and harmony. Hi, I'm Summer Sophia Moon, and I've come here to heal myself and chew bubblegum. And I'm all out of bubblegum. So join me and my special guests as we share and learn how to love ourselves fiercely through self-care, explore the wisdom of the harmonic virtues, and grow our conscious community together. By listening, you are now a fierce heart too. Welcome to the Fierce Heart Alliance. Before we begin today's topic, I'd like to say thank you to our listeners. You're always welcome here. Thank you to our ancestors, spirit guides, and friends who are assisting us today. May these words be a force for good and timelessly infused with light and held in the frequency of rose quartz and spread healing and peace around the world. May it connect to both our consciousness and unconsciousness for the highest and most benevolent outcomes for all. If there's any words left unsaid, we trust in spirit to make things right and let it gently ease into our consciousness as necessary for understanding in our own time, in our own way. And so it is. Thank you. Hey Fierce Hearts, today's episode is the virtue of transformation. It's located on the inner level of the harmonic virtues called the metaphysical level, which are foundational elements of physical life and building blocks of consciousness. Virtues are lessons that can impact our everyday life and relationships. They're aspects of us that are ever evolving, ever shifting, and developing as we mature. And like a beautiful garden, they require some tending and some management to keep healthy and vibrant. The first part of this episode is we'll learn about the virtue, and the second half we'll learn how to work with the virtue. Today, my guest is Deborah Nucci. With over 30 years of experience as an intuitive empath and healing facilitator, she guides individuals and businesses towards transformative change with joy, insight, humor, and compassion. Welcome, Deborah. So do you call yourself an agent of change or a change agent? I know you have a slogan for that.
You know, I do call myself a change agent.
Okay, change agent.
And occasionally I call myself a provocateur.
A provocateur.
Yes, which means change agent.
Yeah.
Basically, you know, I do it both in a disrupting of whatever energy is there to say, hey, you want something different, and from a shining back what something different looks like, feels like to somebody else, and they go, oh, I want that. But yeah, very definitely a change agent. And I didn't used to fully embrace that, even though I say whatever, you know, I meet people at their map of the world and take them where they want to go, not where I want them to go. That's a very different thing.
For sure.
But at the same time, if somebody comes to me, I absolutely know they want change, because
They're
they
ready for
wouldn't
it.
have been attracted to my vibration if that isn't what they wanted. Because I'm very clear on what I do. And I'm a change agent. So if you want somebody who's going to have talk therapy for 6 months and move you along and be your cheerleader, that would not be me. However, I may employ all of those things in helping be that change agent.
As a self-proclaimed provocateur and change agent, what are some of your key thoughts on transformation? And do you have any experiences you want to share regarding that concept?
So transformation or change, if you will, Same thing. And actually, when I think about transformation, I actually spell it differently than others do because I come from a hypnotic background. So when I talk about transformation, I'm talking about the transforming of somebody, something, some aspect. I'm also talking about the TRANCE, formation. In other words, the formation of trance as a doorway or an entry into the place where you can make changes more rapidly and have them automatically generalize into your daily life. So that's one concept there. The other thing I want to point out about change or transformation is we are always changing. We are always shifting, changing, rearranging all the time, always. You can't escape it, even if you wanted to. And even if you say you are the same, you are not. I want to say that your stomach lining regrows every 7 days. So you're not the same.
In your
And there are
body,
in your
it takes
body,
7 years. I think every single
every
cell is
cell has turned
completely
over.
different.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
They say
And so
you're never the same river that you step your foot into. It's never the same river.
nope, it never is. So transformation, first of all, if we look at it as it happens all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and then that allows us to be in a state of movement. If we think about and focus on the transformation itself or the change itself, we're going to get stuck because change happens like turning on or off a light switch. Boom. So you're this way, bing, now you're not. And that's really how that happens. The journey to get from where you are to where you want to be, that's the process. And that's really where we need to stay focused because that change is not going to be think of it this way. So think about a goal that you really wanted, something you strived for, something, whether it's an award or something. And the moment of that award was great and nice and all of that. But if that's all it was, you'd never do it again because it's very, very tiny in time. But what you're really actually thinking about of that change is the journey there.
Mm-hmm.
And all your learnings and all your things about how you got there. That's where the joy comes from. And we get caught up in pursuing that change piece and thinking we're going to get happy when we get that change piece, when actually we should be focusing, again, back to that we should be focusing on the happiness of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And if we focus on that, we will be happy more often than we will not, regardless of whether we make the changes or don't.
Yeah.
And becoming happy about the journey or the pursuit or equating that puts more dopamine in
Right.
your
You get more
brain.
hits of dopamine. Yeah.
Yes, you do.
Satisfaction.
So you don't get the same kind of satisfaction from that momentary glory. Look at there's some podcasts and things about athletes who talk about their big win or their big whatever. And generally that moment is not what they remember the most. It is all the things that led them to achieve that moment. And you're also going to always be chasing after this achievement or this transformation piece if you don't find some way to enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
And understand that by focusing on enjoying the journey, you will always get bits of transformation, but you'll get it from a more harmonious way than if you were to only focus on achievement. It's a hollow way.
Yeah.
And again, I go back to that's my point of view. It may not be yours. It is not gospel. It is not saying that is the way everybody should look at transformation. it is the way I look at transformation.
Yeah, that's fair. And the other aspect of this virtue is the concept, and also it's based on the universal law of perpetual transformation. And this is more relating to energy and the perpetual transformation of energy.
Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit about that?
Well, from a very high level sort of feeling standpoint, because I don't have, I don't have I don't have a, I have only my own understanding of that piece.
Sure.
And it just went out of my head. Bring it back. Say the question again.
What is your understanding of the concept of perpetual transformation of energy?
Oh, all we are is shifting, changing, rearranging, period. That's all we are.
And that's all energy.
And it's all energy. It's
yeah.
all, energy doesn't go away. It simply transforms.
Are there any other thoughts about perpetual transformation of energy that you want to share?
No, there's times and things where I've had transformation, as in when I was first learning hypnosis, and I was in Hawaii at a training there, and I was dreadfully afraid of water. I couldn't swim. I couldn't do any of that. And so they asked for a volunteer for a phobia cure, to be a demo for a phobia, to go up to the front of the room and be put in a trance and do the demo. And it was like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And I remember, and this was where I first fell in love with hypnosis and the power of it and the energy of it and what it could do. I was a person who was deathly afraid of water. I didn't get into water. I didn't swim. I had panicky kinds of things. And we're in Hawaii, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, you want to be in the water. And so anyway, I raised my hand. I went up there and John did his thing. I remember some of it. I remember being in a trance that I loved. I remember that part. And I remember just different things, different pieces, different whatever. And 30 minutes go by, 20 minutes in the whatever. And then, so we go to test whether or not this phobia cure has worked. And I go out, I'm in my husband and I was married at the time, I go out into the water in the bay, and I start panicking. Like, I start to get this, and then I'm freaking out. My husband just shoves my face down into the water with my mask on and, all of that. And I look around and I see turtles and fish, and all of a sudden I'm buoyant and there is no problem. Like, I am, and I realizing that I am in the water, not scared, everything's beautiful. And I start sucking, like, not being able to work with my scuba gear, or not scuba gear, my snorkel, and swallowing, as I come up, for my husband drags me up. But that was, for me, it was like, that's energy transformation. Like, I couldn't do, and then I could. And it was like, okay. And it happened just like that. Right. So I don't know. That's kind of, and there's been a number of those kinds of transformations in my life. Everything from that sort of dramatic to the sublime, the very subtle of seeing someone or something in a different light that allows you to let go of whatever energetic weight you had on it in whatever variety. And all of a sudden, it isn't that anymore. Mm-hmm. And the question is, did that thing change? And the answer is, it did not. But you changed your perception of it. And therefore, your reality changed.
So it sounds like change is pretty important. Why is it so important?
Oh, you'd be dead if you didn't. I mean, the first one. So I think about a heartbeat. And if you think about a heartbeat on an EKG monitor, right? It's got peaks and valleys, right? That's what lets you know you're alive. It's changing all the time. If you see a flat line on an EKG, it means you don't exist in the corporeal body anymore. So I want to be shifting, changing, rearranging all the time until I'm not anymore, right?
Fair enough. And how can we seek to find balance if everything is perpetually changing?
That's a great question. I don't know that I've ever looked at it that way. But if we go back to my point of view on balance, which is a state of constant adjustment, and transformation, which is being happy with the journey that you're on, they're both the same thing.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, let's play devil's advocate. Let's say I don't want change. What happens?
Oh, that's too bad. You will anyway. You can think you're not, but you are. As we discussed previously, your body is going to change whether you go, I'm not going to do it, or I'm not having any of that. Well, too bad. It will happen. You get older, you age. Hair goes from what color it was when I was born to what it is now, which is gray. Okay. So, like, and I can color it, but it has already changed. And so, devil's advocate can be out there all you want. All it does, not wanting to change or not being a fan of it, is put roadblocks in your face. All it does, it puts roadblock in your face because you're going to anyway.
I think you said something like kicking or screaming, you'll go.
Oh yeah. So what I tell people after I've done a piece of change work or asking them if they want to do the change is like, do you want to go kicking and screaming, or do you want to go gracefully? And it's like they pick one. Well, that's an illusion of choice because the presupposition there is you will go. Like it's that thing that parents do to children. Did you want to go to bed at 7 p.m. or 7:30? Gives the kid the illusion of choice. They pick one. Well, you've already put them in the frame you want them in.
Right.
Now, me being the child I was would have said 8, but that's just me. And then we would have had a little interaction to see if I could change my parent, which didn't work out so well. But yeah, so you can think you're not changing. You can not want to change, but all you're doing is creating resistance in your own world and going back to, you can't not think about what you don't want to think about without thinking about it first. So if you are focusing on what you don't want, you will absolutely, unequivocally get more of same.
Mm-hmm. So how does resistance feel in your body? And I know similarly, we've talked about allowing and then resisting. Yeah. So could you speak about that a little bit?
So when you and I talk about allowing, we talk about it in a really kind of gnarly way because, well, let me see if I can say it this way. Sometimes neither you or I are in a allowing mode. We are in a, I want it to be this way. I want to see it this way. I want it to. And the problem with that is you cut out all the other ways that thing could be delivered to you.
How can you recognize that, oh, I'm resisting this? And then also, how does that play into allowing things to happen?
So resistance for me, and again, we're going to go back to everybody has their own decoder ring. Right. So for me, resistance begins to feel like tension. So, and when I think about that, it'll be tension in my stomach, tension in my diaphragm, my shoulders might be tighter. You know, my body in general is constricting versus expanding. I might be, as you described earlier, inward, pulled down towards, and that isn't helpful at all.
And what does allowing feel like?
That's hysterical. You got to leave that in.
Wait, because what is allowing?
Yes, because here we are. So that's the thing. It's like allowing is a very different energy. So resisting is a directive energy. You are putting effort into not doing something, right? Mm-hmm. Allowing is not doing that. Mm-hmm. Allowing is being who you are, grounded in your moment, and open and receptive to what is coming in. And if you've been marinating on what you want instead of what you don't want, you're going to be able to go, oh, it's right there. Or, oh, it's right there. If you're open, if you're constricted, you won't even know it if it was out there.
It's like your focus is narrowed rather than a
Correct.
widescreen view of your
Correct.
peripherally seeing, oh, okay, it's over there. I just have to turn my head. Or
if you think about a miner's helmet, people who go down into the mines, the miner's helmet has a light in the middle of the helmet, the forehead, right? And it has a narrow view. So you can go down into a room and have that miner's helmet on, and you're only going to see a narrow band of light. But if you flip the light switch on in the room, you're going to see, oh, it's a cavernous room. There's shit tons of space here. And what I want is over there. So it opens the aperture, and you hear me say that all the time, for what it is to come in. And this is a really strong piece of manifesting, in that once you do all the work to take your energy information and turn it into an intention, which creates energy in formation, then you take action, you put it out there, but you let go of the form that it can come back to you in. That's allowing. That's saying, I want this. You paint the picture, you do all that. I want this to happen. But if it's a blue house instead of a red house, or a green, you open up yourself to even a better version of whatever that was that you wanted, if it doesn't have to be in the exact form. So you let go of the form. That makes sense?
Yeah, and the undercurrent of that sense or concept, I would say, is control. Because when I've experienced allowing, I have to let go and resign control of how this is going to turn out. And I may not be able to influence it, or I just have to allow things to transpire and transform and develop the way that they will, without me fiddling with it and fussing and trying to manipulate the situation for it to turn out the way that I think this should happen.
Yeah, exactly that. And you're exactly right. It is that allowing piece is transformative, in the sense that you can't control much in your life, even though we think we can. You can control what you think. You can control how you interpret your feelings, but you can't necessarily control the feeling itself.
And you can't control other people.
Oh, you can't control other people. Hell no. Like, and just a little bit on
you're not supposed to. I mean,
well, yeah, no, it's not healthy, and it's not useful, and it generally doesn't work for a very length of time.
Right. Yeah.
And there are constructs around when it does work, and they're generally pretty negative.
Yeah.
But let's not go there.
Well, we've talked about transformation and allowing and resisting, and one of the fundamentals of the Fierce Heart Alliance is self-care. So I'm wondering, how does transformation and change impact or influence your self-care?
So I think being aware of your own state, for starters, cultivating that awareness of being able to interpret what state you're in, is where we start. Like, I'm feeling X, or I'm feeling Y, or I'm feeling this sharp pain over here, or I'm feeling this sensation. So it starts with what you're feeling and how you want to take care of that. And what I mean by that is, we often think, or at least I did do, sometimes still do, think I need to perform at a certain level for somebody else, or for a work, or for this, or for that. And truthfully, all we have to do is show up, be authentic, and give ourselves grace. I know for a fact that whenever I get stressed and I'm way too wound up and I can't seem to find relief or whatever, it is me not allowing, there's that word again, myself the grace that I would give others. So one of the techniques I employ when I'm being really hard on myself because this isn't happening or something is not going my way, it's like, what would I tell somebody else if they were talking to me about this? And almost always I would go, oh, it's perfectly acceptable. And then that causes really usually a physical shift in me about, why aren't I giving myself that? And then with that question, usually what happens is that relaxes into allowing. Or one of my friends, you or somebody else, happens to say something in a certain way, sometimes with a 2x4, sometimes with a 4x4.
Theoretically, not physically.
Yes. Metaphysically.
For those who don't know us,
for those who don't
metaphorically.
know us, metaphysically, that allows me to be, like, what? And that, once again, shakes my perception. I can no longer hold on to that silliness, if you will, and I'm now transformed into a different level and can laugh at myself and go, yeah, I guess I wasn't a lot, and there's, when that realization happens, I've walked through the door and I can't go back to that unless I want to tell myself a story and recreate that.
Yeah. And I find that the resistance can be a slow process or it can be a fast process. And we can either just quickly put up a wall of, nope, not doing this, or it can slowly tighten and guard. And we don't even realize that we're resisting until something snaps us out of it. Oh, wow, I didn't even realize. Okay, now I've realized it, and now I can make the change. And now I choose to open and receive and allow flow. And
there's another part to that, which is when we're feeling resistance, sometimes there's a really, really, really good reason for that.
yes.
And you have to be able to discern the difference between, am I resisting because I have a jerky way of looking at something, or something that is not quite as fleshed out as it could be, or is it telling me something that I need to listen to and run the opposite direction?
That's a very good point.
So I think most every emotion, feeling can be useful in some context. Worry is not one of them, but we'll let that aside. So resistance, we think of, oh, we shouldn't have resistance. That depends on the situation. Sometimes resistance is good, and sometimes resistance is telling us something that we need to listen to before we move forward, or not move forward at all in that direction because that resistance is telling us something. As an example, I was in Malaysia and I was going into a outdoor cave kind of dwelling temple. I'd gotten up to the top of the temple and started to go inside. And the deeper I went inside, the more I was resisting. I didn't want to go in there. I was freaking out. So I followed that. I turned and ran around. Eventually came to understand is first time I had been in a small space like that, and I am a bit claustrophobic. So there was no really good reason for me to overcome that resistance. Like, getting out of there was what I needed to do. So most everything can be useful in some context. The question is this the context where it's useful or not? And I use that distinguish of useful or not because it's better than good or bad, positive or negative,
right or wrong.
Or wrong. It really comes down to, in this moment, is it useful? That's a very different way to parse something than putting a pejorative of good, bad, positive, negative. And that's my world belief.
I have a really good experience of that as well that happened a couple of years ago. And there's this project that I really wanted to take on that in my mind, it made a lot of sense. And if I just did X, Y, and Z, it would do all the things that I'm looking for. And it would help me in all these different kinds of ways. And I just couldn't bring myself to start the project. And I tried and I did all this motivational sort of things. And I'm like, okay, I got this. And I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And then I just finally realized, you know what? If I do things, I could do a different project and I could do like a craft or something like that. And I have no problem doing it and completing it, and I'm not procrastinating or anything like that. Why am I procrastinating so much on this project? Why can't I make any headway? And why does it feel like I'm ripping teeth out in order to like do anything? And so I sat with it and I realized that it just is not the right direction for me. And there's some pros and cons to the project. I've only been focusing on the pros,
Yeah.
but I wasn't looking at the cons if I were to take this on. And I realized if I would have taken it on, there's a lot of burden and a lot of responsibility that I honestly didn't want to take on by doing it. And so being really honest with myself, I really didn't want to do it. And so that was the moment where I just realized my heart isn't in this, and that's
Yeah.
okay. And I just, brushed my hands of it. I let go. And then wouldn't you know, like everything shifted for me because I was getting so, once again, constricted and,
And you were attached to the form.
I really was. Yeah.
The
And
way
so,
it had to come in.
yeah.
So if you looked at what you wanted, the way it had to come in, there were things you wanted about that did come in once you let go of having to have it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was, to your point, a really good way of like, that was resistance that was helping me.
Truly.
Yeah.
And decoder ring again.
Yeah.
How to recognize resistance that is telling you you don't need to be doing this, and how to recognize this as resistance of you're being silly or you're being fearful or you're being whatever, put an adjective in there,
Not safe.
or not say whatever it is. And there could be some value here. Open the aperture, see how you feel, and then decide.
Yeah. Yeah. What is more, what is, what's the bigger picture of this
Yes.
situation that I'm
Yeah.
not giving attention to, or what am I
Right.
trying to ignore about the
Yeah.
situation that maybe there's something really important that I'm not seeing or not allowing in?
And generally speaking, when somebody is talking about, to use your example of a project or a thing that they want or they're working towards, if it is shaded in either direction, meaning, oh, I see all the good things of it, or oh, I see all the challenges of it, chances are you don't have the aperture open full enough, because you should be able to see both of those.
Yeah. I see this being like an example of a relationship, and I'm sure we've all been in them, of like we only look at the green flags.
Oh,
We
yeah.
don't want to pay attention to the red flags. So
Yeah.
maybe the red flags are things that we should actually be paying attention to in addition to the green flags. And
Right.
ideally there's no red flags, but there's so many times we're in relationships where it's like, oh well, he's blah 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 or she's blah blah blah, and you just kind of, you don't pay attention to the glaring red flags in the room, and you just like, no, but the
Until
good
you get
things
farther down.
outweigh the bad.
Yeah,
And
until you get farther down into it, and then you realize you got to be dealing with these in
mm-hmm,
order to have a healthy relationship.
absolutely.
And that could either mean you both figure out, whoa, wait, yeah, no, we don't really vibe, like back to frequency.
Mm-hmm.
We don't
Vibration,
really,
yeah.
yeah, we our vibration isn't the same. And actually you could use that same thing in a relationship that either grows together, the vibrations continue to be harmonious, or they don't.
Yeah, and if you break up, that's transformation too.
That's transformation, and that's a different vibration.
And you
And
two are now different people,
yep.
and you have a different experience now, and it's been a lesson based on the experience that you had
Right.
when you're together.
Right. Relationships. Ooh, yeah. They are the backbone of all social interaction. And I remember when I want to say I was probably 7 years old. I was a precocious little youngster. And my, I just lost it again. What were we talking about? Sorry.
Being a precocious
Oh,
youngster.
no, before
Uh,
that.
Transformation in relationships being the
in
backbone.
relationships. So my mom and I, we had a cantankerous relationship throughout our whole life. Love, hate, love, hate, love, hate. Ultimately, I think we both saw each other's value at the end, and that was cool. But and even throughout it. But I remember she was being rather emotional, and my mother was undiagnosed bipolar when I was growing up, so that was kind of weird being an empath growing up with that.
Sure.
Especially, learning not me and not me. But I remember she and I had been having this discussion about our relationship and the relationship with the kids and her relationship with dad and whatever. And I was getting super frustrated, as only a 7-year-old can get. And I had my hands on my hips and, my little body shaking. It's like, Mom, relationships are messy. Just get over it. And, stormed my fine little self out of the room. And she reminded me of that frequently after that, because for her, that was an epiphany. For her, it was like, oh, okay, well, they're messy. Once we accept that, then a whole lot more things can occur.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Than if we think they're supposed to be other than messy.
Right.
So,
because we're always changing.
Shifting, changing, rearranging.
And ideally that you can change together and grow together, and no matter how long or how short you're together for.
Yeah. And understand that you're going to grow apart sometimes. And what does that look like? And how can that be okay? And how can we give one another the space to have the ability to figure out their own new boundaries or whatever, whether or not that includes us.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. That's glib to say, hard to live in a relationship.
Yeah. And I think that that's also true for family relationships.
Oh, yes.
And friend relationships.
Yep.
And, they say that some people are here for a day, some people are here for a season, there's some are here for a lifetime, and it just depends on, what category they fit in. And sometimes things change, and that's okay.
And things will change. And, I have a person that was in my life for over 30 years that I had to say goodbye to for a lot of reasons. From where I sit right now, it doesn't dim the coolness of the memories we had, but it did for a while. But it doesn't mean I want to cross the street to say hello to them now.
Right.
Because our vibrations are different.
Mm-hmm.
And they no longer either attract or repel in a way that is beneficial for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very hard thing.
Yeah. It can be very painful.
Yeah.
Well, my next question is about the elements. I know you love working with the elements so much, and I'm wondering if you can explain how the elements relate to transformation.
So, yeah, the elements are in everything, for starters: earth, fire, water, wind. Some people call it air. And they have a particular frequency or resonance. And so when I'm thinking about, as an example, fire energy is a directive energy. And it's get shit done. It's move things forward. It's create some idea. It's charge it down. It's directive. And if you've got a lot of that energy going on, like, I want to get things done. You might think that to bring balance to that, like you want to scale that back a little bit, that you would go swiftly over to a receptive state. Well, maybe not. Maybe you might want to bring in some supportive energy. And that would be, so if I think about fire energy in particular, you might think, oh, the best way to counteract fire is with water, right? That's going to put out the fire. Well, that is right. It's going to put out the fire. And we're going to get this polarity situation going where fire, water. What we want to do is find some balance. We want to pull that fire energy back a little bit. We want to bank the fire so that we have a steady, warm state of moving things forward in a path that's going to. So what we really want to bring in is some earth energy, because that's going to calm things down just a little bit. It's going to give us some grounding, but it's going to still allow us to move forward. It's not going to put out the fire. It's going to merely bank it. Okay. And so when I think about the elemental energies, everything falls into one of the elemental energies. And when the energies are all happening together, one of the modalities that I learned was this: what happens when they're all in dynamic, trying to find their balance, is that's something called storm. But as with all things, shifting, changing, rearranging, I now don't look at it that way. I look at the four elements, and then there's a fifth element that to me embodies everything in that spirit. And that is all of the elements, all of the everything. And so spirit is this thing that speaks to me as an element and all of that. But as I'm working with the elements, I'm thinking about things in terms of how that particular element is, what its main driver is. So as I said, fire is directive and moving forward. There are also kind of flavors of fire energy. So, and when you think about overlaying the astrological signs in there, you have a cardinal sign, a fixed sign, and a mutable sign. Cardinal means starting, moving things forward. Fixed meaning trying to keep things within the same sort of frequency. And then mutable means flipping all over the place, right? So there are flavors of fire energy. Cardinal, and that's useful for starting things. That's useful for keeping things moving. But when you want to maintain something, you really want to get into a fixed fire sign, because that's going to keep things moving at kind of the same pace. And if you want to be able to switch, change, rearrange quickly, you're going to want to be in that flavor of mutable. I can switch into whatever I need to easily. But I think about people in terms of elemental energies. When I encounter somebody, I'm interpreting or reading that not me information that's coming in, and I'm putting it in generalities of that feels grounded, that feels, pushy, that feels those kinds of things. So it gives me a framework to look at people and things, but it's also in the natural world. And so it is, for me, it feels very, very foundational. Like everything is elemental and can be reduced down to one of the elements and one of the flavors of the elements. Right. And so when I'm doing change work with people or leading somebody, facilitating change work with somebody, I'm looking at things, I'm feeling things, I'm assessing things, I'm discerning what energies they have that they're running their programs on, what energies they're missing, and how I can bring these together in the most harmonious way. And sometimes it might be I want to shock them, and I'm going to bring in some water against fire, because I really want to put out all of that fire energy. And I realize you just talked about all of that in a very high level, weird sort of energetic way, but that's kind of how I make sense of it right now.
That's fair. This is the part of the episode where we learn how to work with the virtue of transformation. So, what are some practices that you suggest, Deborah, to help us work with change rather than resist it?
I don't know that I would put it like that,
That's fair.
because as we think about it, there's always going to be a reason for me to want to work with resistance or I think what you might be getting at is, when you're in a resistant state, how might you change that to help you get
Yeah.
out of that resistant state? Well, first to go, hey, I'm in a resistant state.
Mm-hmm.
And then to say, well, is that useful for me? And if
Mm-hmm.
it is useful for you, for whatever reason, and sometimes I will say that being resistant, and I can think of myself in some cases where somebody's given me both logic and intuitive, like all the reasons, and it adds up. But I am simply not going to accept that yet. Like I am not going to, for what, like there's something. So I might have to take that in, go away with that, and then come back and go, yeah, I was being a jerk. That was, but I think it's that internal questioning, or first sensing, where am I at? Is this useful? And if it is useful, you're done with that test, right? You just keep doing it. If it's not useful, we go back to that. What do I want to feel instead, be instead, have instead, do instead?
And are there any rituals or actions that you do to tangibly create change?
That's a great question. There probably are. I don't know that I've ever thought about it that way.
Because I know you burn your prayers and, things along those lines.
Oh, well, so I do new moon rituals for sure. And a new moon ritual is about doing it on the new moon, for starters, taking into consideration what energies that new moon is bringing in based on whatever your understanding is of those energies, and making like my ritual for new moons has to do with 4 different areas. It's, what do you want to release? What do you want to be? What are you giving gratitude for? What is your intention? When we talk about intention, we're talking about say it how you want it, as if you already have it. Because once again, that becomes a lightning rod for what you're attracting in. And then what do you want guidance for? So you write those things down, and then if you're doing it on your own, then you would speak that out loud. So I am releasing X and Y, and I'm releasing all fear that is no longer useful. And the reason I say that in that way is because sometimes fear is useful. So you really don't want to release all of your fear. That would be silly. You really don't want to do that. Trust me, the universe will set things up for you to realize that you really don't want to do that. So what do you want? And then you're like halfway there, right? And then if you're doing this alone, you say it out loud, and you say it as if you mean it. And you do this. I do this after I've done a meditation. I'll probably use crystals. I'll probably, do all of that, and I'll say it. And then if it's a nice day, I'll go out to the fire pit and I'll burn that. And as I'm burning that, I'll do some Reiki symbols and do some other things and this is where I tangibly let go of the form, because I've put it in this piece of paper. I've said it out loud, and now I'm taking that and it's changing, it's transforming. So it's paper and now it's ash. If it's raining, and I used to run a meditation ritual circle, then it's the shredder. Or any other way you can rip it. There's any other way that you want to change that form of that thought. And then you repeat that for gratitude. Gratitude, again, is another one. And I believe, and certainly in my own life, I've come to realize that having a gratitude practice, like a meditation practice, is truly transformative. And when I say a gratitude practice, this isn't necessarily, and this could be for you, but so a gratitude practice of, you have a little journal and you go, I'm grateful for this, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for, and you don't really put any emotion into the things that you're grateful for. You're just writing them down to tick the box, to put it in a journal, to do that. Gratitude really has to, and especially times when you don't feel very grateful and things aren't all that, it's like you have to reach in and find something that you can connect with your heart and your gut, and feel like, I am so grateful. Well, like, I'm really grateful for our friendship.
Same.
And if I can just get to that moment, like just that, like that's a good one, rather than a 3-page dissertation on all the things that I like about my life. so and then again, you say it out loud as if you mean it, and you either transform it via fire or shredder, or there's probably a ton more creative ways to transform things. And then you go through intention. And again, intention is about saying it how you want it, as if you already have it. As an example, I am healthy. I attract loving relationships. I find a moment of extreme joy in every day.
Nice.
So those are things I can be congruent with, and then put that out. And what that sets up is all the ways that can come back to me in ways that I didn't specify. And again, you say it out loud, you say it as if you mean it, then you burn it, you shred it, you transform it in some way. And then the last one, of course, is asking for what you need guidance for. And this one is, for me, has lately been the most powerful one. It's when I can admit that I can't manipulate everything. I sure can't control everything. And, silly of me to think I can, but hey guys, can you help me? Yeah.
Little help down here.
Hanging out here on a limb. I'm really struggling. And for weeks and months, it seemed like after my mom had died, I was asking for assistance in navigating the grief in a way that wouldn't destroy my life.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also this very safe way of me acknowledging that was there, and I still needed help with that, and I still needed to keep that in my awareness of that's what. And then time passes, and that wasn't anything I needed guidance with anymore. Mm-hmm. And that kind of thing. So again, say it out loud as if you mean it, and then you do that, and you do that with it to transform it. But yes, I do various rituals. I do really weird things, like I'll get a mantra in my head. Like one of the ones, I realized I was in a real negative state. It wasn't serving me. It wasn't useful. And so instead of saying all the negative things I'd been saying, the things I repeated in my head without really realizing it, I started saying, good things happen to me. Good things happen for me. I make good things happen. And it was general enough. And I started to train my neurology that that's what was going on. Again, what you think is what's going to be in your reality. Change your thinking, change your state, change your reality.
And there's a lot of neuroscience these days that's supporting that, and it's pretty fascinating stuff.
Totally.
Neuroplasticity and contemplative practices. Absolutely.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that is getting a lot of press now. There is a lot of science around that. But for me, it always was when I formed that understanding by virtue of experience in my own self. I got it. Like, you can tell me it doesn't work. You can tell me it does work. I have direct experience that it does.
Right.
And we can just latch onto the placebo effect. So whether you think it does well or whether you think it doesn't, you're right.
You are right.
And the placebo effect is something that can be harnessed very successfully, if you understand the components around that. But there's a reason why it works. It's the way our brain works. That's a whole different podcast.
Yeah. Well, getting back to practices for change and transformation, I really love what Carl Jung talks about of transformation. And he says that a good way after a therapy session is to take the garbage out. That's a tangible way to just get the garbage out, removing it. You go through your closet, you go through a storage unit or something like that, and you just purge, and then you give it away. And the idea is that someone else can love it now. So you're opening that, but then you have tangibly released, and that is really good for the whole cycle to keep going and
what was
process.
The Japanese organizer,
Marie Kondo?
Marie Kondo. So that was her whole thing, right?
Love it.
Get rid of and the other thing to that is everything has energy and vibration. So if you got a lot of shit around from your past, get rid of it. It is taking up space. It is taking up energy. I just recently got rid of a size 2 pair of shorts and a little very lacy bustier kind of thing. I'm 65. When the hell am I going to wear those things again? Right? They're taking up space. I have photos of my perfect little body in them. There you go. Don't need them anymore. Right? We all got stuff like that.
And I think it's also important to note the feeling that you feel when you see that object. And so if it brings you joy, that's one thing. But if you look at something and you like, oh, I'm suddenly back in that feeling of my ex gave me that.
Yeah.
And you're brought back to how your ex made you feel.
Yeah.
You're now in that feeling. And so if you let it go, you're no longer going to be given that reminder, and your energy won't be, shot back to that negative feeling energy or unhappy feeling.
And the other way that works is that you can have a really good feeling about something and lose it and still have that good feeling about that thing. As an example, my mother had made me a scrapbook of lots of pictures from my childhood on up through. This is after she and I hadn't talked to each other for a couple of years, and I had done a scrapbook for somebody else that I had showed her. And so she wanted to do that. That got left in Australia, long story, and I don't have that anymore. It was letters, it was pictures, it was stuff. And there are times when I go, oh, I don't have that anymore. And when I really think about it, what I have is the heart from the intent of what that exchange was for her and I, whether or not I have that object. So it works both ways.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a lot of things. When I got divorced and I was traveling all over the country and then over to Australia, I had a rolling laptop bag, a pager, 2 cell phones, because it was a long time ago, and you had to have a different one for every country, and some like half a dozen stones. And that's what I spent 2, 3, 4 years doing. I didn't need any more than that. Now I have a house filled with stuff. Like, yeah. I'll just leave that out there in that form of like, how much stuff do you really need?
Yeah. And you've purged recently, so ideally it's stuff that you like.
It is, but I also realize there's still stuff here that's got to go, like all the time. Gotta go.
It's a work in progress.
It is a work in progress, and I think you go through phases and stages of things that are important.
Yeah, it's a cycle.
Yeah.
Well, talking about self-care, and previously we talked about the elements. How can we work with the elements in daily life?
Again, you're talking about something I do so automagically that it's hard to think about it in terms of how somebody else can work with the elements, other than just kind of reading into. So for me, I'll get up in the morning, I do a meditation, and I will read. And what I mean by that is, let me just think about how I do it.
Sure.
Is I relax and allow into a receptive state of feeling my way into what the energy is for the day. And I might do that just like I described it. I might do that by using a deck, a intuitive deck of some kind, whether it's a tarot deck or a cosmic ascension deck, or pick a deck, any deck. I might do it that way, or I might just feel into it and go, oh yes, this feels very watery, or this feels very this. And then I might further go into thinking, well, what do I need to do today? What am I needing to get done, or whatever? And is this energy conducive to that or not? And if not, what do I need to bring in order to do that? And that could be bring in terms of a stone, that could be bring in terms of something I say to myself, some music I listen to, whatever. But I'm always paying attention to energetically what I'm feeling. And that parses into both from a elemental, fire, water, wind, that genre, or feelings in general, states of being, that kind of thing. So it's hard for me to put, I would have to give that a little more thought. It's hard for me to put into words what I do automatically.
Sure. Yeah, you've been doing it for so long. It sounds like the root of it and the beginnings of it is just self-awareness.
Totally self-awareness. And this is self-awareness that isn't blinded by what you want. This is true. How am I feeling? What am I noticing? And I try to take things out of, I try to take things into a neutrality. So instead of, what are you feeling? What are you feeling? Notice what you notice. And as you start talking about what it is you do notice, you'll notice it's in an element or two or three, and that's, but it's bringing that awareness to noticing what you're noticing.
You've taught me a lot about the elements and working with it, and I'm slowly developing my own sense and understanding of it. And I'll text you out of the blue and, is this a watery day? Because I'm feeling pretty emotional. And it's, to me, what it feels like is that I have my own feelings, and then there's this heightened sense of an overarching theme of the day. And if it's a fiery day, it's a momentum, it's a let's get it done. I get so much done in a day, and it's like I can ride the wave of that. Or maybe a wave is not the right, because we're talking about fire, but we're fueling the fire of, and we're able to flow. But then, if it's an air day, I am so up in my head and I can't get into my body, and I am just like anxious, and I'm thinking, and I'm worrying, and I'm ruminating, and I realize I'm not in my body. Go ahead.
Here's an interesting thing as I'm hearing you talk about that, is that you are giving a negative connotation to being in air.
Well, that's
or in
just
wind, because in that day, but my point is elements can be positive or negative. So in that example that was not a great wind experience or air experience that you wanted. You're in your head, you can't get out of it. But there are other times where being in your head, you're super imaginative, you're super creative, you got all that stuff coming in. That's also air. So it's like, what is the flavor of that element that's coming in that lets you know what you need to bring to support, or how you need to shift your point of view in order, or whether you want to just hang out in that. So another thing you can do with whatever you're perceiving is, instead of going, what do I want it to be instead? It's like, I wonder what this is. So employing this notion of curiosity. Curiosity takes judgment and discernment out of the way. And so it's just, I'm curious, where is that coming from? How, where in my body is it? Where do I think? And that can lead to introspection, to more understanding of that thing. And the understanding of that thing changes the vibration. So you don't have to bring anything in. You don't even have to get to, what do I want to be instead? Sometimes allowing something to be and just being curious about it can bring a neutrality.
That's a really good point. And as I said, I'm still learning, but how I learn is through contrast. And so I typically notice the negative first, and then I can figure out the nuance of the positive. So that's where I'm at with the elements. I can okay, it's not that it's unpleasant. It's just like, I'm very aware that I'm in my head, and okay. And, same thing with emotions, with the water. And, there's this flowing, this watery kind of, floating in the ocean kind of feeling. But then there's, you can move through things, but then you can also be pretty emotional. And they're like, why am I suddenly crying? And I just, and then earth, there's times where I'm like, wow, I feel really grounded and I feel like I'm halfway into the earth, and so it's a nuance, but it is a very personal experience.
It's your decoder ring. And
Right.
earth can also be, you can feel totally stuck.
Oh,
Like I
yeah.
am absolutely mired in this quicksand.
Good
I
point.
cannot move forward.
Yeah.
And that's, and that's where you want to bring other energies in. If you want to change your state, or you might want to go, let's explore this.
Yeah, what if we add some water? We can make it mud instead of dried clay,
right. Or
and we
what
can
if,
kind of,
or what if we just go, let's sit here with this.
Yeah. How does this feel?
And notice what you notice.
Yeah.
And that's where some transformation and awareness can come from as well.
That's a really good point, because in shamanism, they say that a shaman is comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes. Oh,
And
love
so
that.
I think that is the magic of sensing the elements and like, okay, this is where we're at right now. This is accepting, this is allowing, this is not resisting. I'm feeling this right now, and just allowing yourself, because knowing that it's probably going to change tomorrow. It will change tomorrow.
And so sometimes when you're in an emotional state, and I did this a lot when, the year after, well, up through my mom's illness and her dying and all of that, was I would be in a crap ass mood, like all kinds of stuff. And sometimes I'd go, okay, I'm going to just go down into this even further. I'm going to turn on Hallmark movies. I'm going to, maybe get a glass of champagne, because that's going to send me down a total, wow, 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 snotty cry river. And maybe what I'm needing to do is that crying release. I need to explore that piece, and that will bring me peace.
Yeah. The depth of the transformation.
The depth of that. Yeah. And to your point of being comfortable, like my whole mantra this 2024, because I realized how challenging 2023 was for me, because I didn't really embrace this, was being comfortable with uncomfortable. Like, we are in a very changeable economy. We are like, who knows if I'm going to have my job or not have my job, that kind of stuff. And the thing is, I freaking cannot control any of that.
Right.
Zippo. So why am I spending valuable brain space noticing what I'm noticing when it ain't doing jack for me?
Right.
And so can I stop that kind of stuff, or mitigate that, by going, this is uncomfortable. And, being comfortable with uncomfortable, and being somebody who deals with a lot of physical pain in my body. I only have to remember that I control a lot of that via self-hypnosis or various different things, but I live with a lot of it, and I just turn the volume down. I've just learned how to turn the volume down, right? So, and it knows to turn the volume up when it really needs to get my attention and make me do something different. But, right? And I'm not the only one who lives in something like that, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't affect my life very much. But again, it is learning to be comfortable with uncomfortable.
And previously, you talked about how you splice apart the word transformation. I've also heard of transinformation, like changing information.
Yep. Any and all of those. So when we're talking about the hypnotics or hypnotic language patterns, we're talking about understanding that the brain processes language in a particular way based on cultural, all kinds of things. But if we're talking about American, processes it the way sentences have, right? So you got that. Well, just try messing up a sentence and moving the language around, and feel how different saying that is for yourself. So, and that can flip you into, because it now doesn't make sense from your brain.
Right.
So I love that.
I think I said change information, and I think a better way to explain it is moving, because I think of transportation, so moving information, so it's constantly moving. And so we also talked about you talked about transformation in mentioning that you don't always have to perform at a certain performance. You don't have to perform at a certain level.
Right.
And so that comes around to, that touches on another virtue called rhythm, and that there is a rest and an action, and we can swing between all of that. And then between the two of act and rest, there is transformation, and you're changing and you're moving from one to the other. And so there is a cycle. And so recognizing where you are in that cycle, and we'll get more into cycles and rhythms in the next couple months, but that's where it begins, is the transformation to move into the next cycle. That's something that I wanted to.
And we're always in a state of evolution, whether we're progressing up or down. That's evolving, and we're always doing that. So,
and maybe transformation is another way to say evolution. A personal evolution.
Yeah, definitely that.
Wow.
And there's another thing I like to ask myself when I'm stuck, which is, what if you imagine something different? And going back to the first two words of that sentence, what if? So there's what if, there's act as if. Fake it till you make it, act as if this is true. And when we talk about writing intentions, say it how you want it, as if it's already true. That is a very, very, very powerful transformative concept. And again, what it does is it sets up the rhythm of you inside to be a particular resonance by that statement that allows more things to come in. And you notice I use that word allow.
Good. That lovely word.
That lovely word that sometimes you and I go, oh, allowing. We're allowing. I found myself allowing yesterday. It felt really good that I was allowing.
It's hard.
It's hard. It's very hard. And sometimes it's not. So as with everything, it depends on your point of view. Your experience of reality depends upon your point of view.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Deborah, do you have any other final thoughts on transformation?
I wish I could come up with something really pithy and wisdomy, but I guess I'll come, to something that is kind of more crass. Transformation occurs just like change. All we are is. And you can go kicking and screaming. You can go willingly. You can go with a parade. You can go with bells on. But the presupposition behind all of that is you will go. You will transform.
You will.
You will. It's inevitable. It's part of life. You cannot keep the same stomach lining, even if you wanted to. You can't. It's not within your control. You can, however, perpetuate a condition in that stomach lining by continuing to put the same stuff in and think the same thoughts.
Good point. Yeah.
But your cells will be different when they start out.
And when you remove that, they will be different too.
Exactly. I love my nephew used to travel a lot, go on different adventures, and it was like I would give him a hug when he left and say, I love you, and come back different. And it was just this very kind of snarky little kind of, but just leaving open that notion of we're always different. We're always changing. We're always got something that we're shifting, right? And it is a normal part of being a human on the planet. Even if we don't want to. Doesn't change it.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much, Deborah. This has been enlightening, transforming.
Yes. Shifting, changing, rearranging.
A wonderful time as always. Thank you so much, Deborah. Well, that's our episode for this week. Feel free to leave any comments you might have about your experience with transformation to keep the conversation going. I'd love to hear from you. And please like and subscribe. It helps this podcast more than you know. Next week is our integration episode where I share channeling about transformation. Take care of your hearts. Till next time.